Hello and welcome to Flat Out's British Champions Day preview in association with Racing TV. A fantastic weekend's racing ahead. I'm joined, as always, by my partner in crime, racing analyst Jack Nicol. How are you, Jack?
Yeah, very good, Joey. Thank you very much. Yeah, looking forward to the weekend. It's always a great card, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's one of the ones I look forward to the most. It's just high quality, wall-to-wall, brilliant racing, isn't it? And we should also welcome to the podcast for the first time, Frankie Foster, racing broadcaster and also ambassador for our sponsors, Opulence Thoroughbreds. Frankie, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Joe. Looking forward to it. And I've joined on a top card, haven't I? To join you on Champions Day. I've done well. So thanks for having me, and really looking forward to chatting racing, and obviously looking forward to getting racing on Saturday.
You certainly are very welcome, sir. Are you going?
I will be, yes. Yeah, I love this day. I mean, don't get me wrong. Some people say it's a little bit late in the year with crossing over with the jump season, but I feel like this is a proper card. There's some real good battles at the top of the market, I think, and I'm sure we'll get into it. But yeah, really looking forward to it. It's a great day.
Fantastic betting card, I think. But we should also note you've been at the sales this week with Opulence Thoroughbreds, our sponsors. Have you been looking at some nice horses? I imagine you have. Have you acquired any? Yeah,
really good week. Super exciting, actually. I've obviously been to the sales myself before, but I've never been part of a team or a group that's buying these yearlings or horses. And even when George was bidding in the ring, it kind of got my heart pumping as well, because I knew that it was Opulence bidding on the yearling. So really exciting. We picked up a Pinatubo filly this week in book 2, and everyone was of the opinion that she was a fantastic looking filly. So she's one that's going to be really exciting, and probably more exciting than that. We only ever find out once they hit the track. But in terms of the what they might do in the years to come, we also picked up one in book 1, another filly by Palace Pier, and that means that she can go for those book 1 bonuses, which I think is really generous of Tats. You've only got to win a class 2, 3 or 4 maiden or novice, so it's definitely doable to get that 25k bonus. And she's also in the British bonus scheme as well, so there's plenty of prizes to be picked up with her, hoping that she's going to be a good racehorse. And then there's 3 more yearlings that you'll find on our website that are already on there because they were purchased at Goffs, again with bonuses up for grabs. A New Bay filly that could go for the Goffs Million scheme. So an exciting team being built for next year. Talking yearlings, there's also some youngsters that are already on the ground and will be going for the all-weather champs, and then going into their 3-year-old careers next season. But as far as the sales went, everybody that's been following the sales will know how competitive it is, how much money's been spent. So to pick up one in book 1 and one in book 2 is brilliant, and shares will be available. Everyone that's familiar with how we work, it's a one upfront payment for 2 years, all included. You have you pay your money and you have your fun, and they're very well bred, and we're really looking forward to it. So a great week for Opulence.
Absolutely, and I encourage anyone watching who is interested in getting into racehorse ownership to head over to Opulence Thoroughbreds website and see some of those horses that are available. I'm sure shares are available in plenty, and especially those 2 exciting horses by Pinatubo and Palace Pier, really up-and-coming stallions. That'll be really interesting to see how they get on going forward. Jack, right, shall we look over to the action at Ascot this week? Could you possibly give us a weather update or anything else punters should know about the going, and all of the small print that we kind of have to take heed of ahead of these big days?
Yes, so I think it's important to note, obviously, declarations this morning. I think they warned that if there was any heavy in the ground, they were going to switch to the inner course. That has happened. It is soft all over. They've had around about 15 mils in the last week or so. But I don't think it's going to get much worse than that now, which is good news, obviously. But at least we know now how we're playing it. There's going to be three races affected by that switch: the Long Distance Cup, the Champion Stakes, and of course the Fillies and Mare Stakes. I think distances might change a little bit, but not too much. I don't think there's too much to get worried about by that. But it is going to be
around 80. I think it's around about like 80 yards lost off a couple of the races. So we're talking significant, but not massively significant.
Yeah, and it's a slightly sharper course. One thing I did note last year is that first race, a lot of horses struggled to get into it. The fillies and mares race, I think the winner pretty much made all as well. So I'd be looking towards on the inner course horses that are quite aggressively ridden and up to the floor throughout.
Certainly. And so looking at this year's renewal, Jack, I know you've been a big fan of Kyprios the whole way. He's not a horse you've been particularly keen to take on, and I imagine this will be no different again.
Yeah, at the minute, this is probably the one race which I'd probably be happy to keep my powder dry for now. I must admit, I was surprised that they've come here with Kyprios. I thought, with it being only a Group 2, they're obviously only coming now for the prize money. He had a fairly hard enough race, obviously just a fortnight ago. And Trawlerman and Al Nair are coming here as fresh horses. Of course, Trawlerman beat him in this race last year, so it's going to be a real test for him. I think this could be probably the sternest test of his career. So it's a race I'm really looking forward to, and probably at the prices I would be looking to take him on if really pushed. But at the moment, I'm not quite sure. Probably the two I mentioned. I think it's really important because it's going to be such a slog that you want to come here with a fresh horse like Trawlerman was last year, and he just got the better of Kyprios, didn't he?
He certainly did, yes. And it was a titanic battle, and it must have been it was some effort for Kyprios to come back from what he came back from to run that sort of race. Frankie, is a horse I'm sure that he does warm your heart a bit, Kyprios. It's been a fantastic little battler. I mean, talk about iron horses. He's up there, isn't he? I mean, the amount of wins that he's had in his career at the top level is something sensational.
Yeah, he's an incredible horse. One that I've been lucky to see win in the flesh plenty of times. My calendar's aligned with him mostly, so I've seen him for most of his races this year. I think this kind of sets him up to really stamp. Well, not that he needs to prove anything, but there are factors going against him. In that this will be the first time he's raced this many times in a season. As Jack said, he was obviously beaten in it last year. He had a tough race over in France. There were a lot of things that really do make you say, he's going to have to be so tough. And I understand what Jack's saying, whereby that might mean a lot of people hold the same opinion. We hope he wins, but maybe not willing to back him at the price. The only thing that makes me more confident is that we haven't seen Trawlerman on ground softer than good to soft. And I'm hoping maybe that blunts him a little bit, because I do think it is a 2-horse race. And I don't think they don't need to come here, like you said, Joey. So if he wasn't in great form, then they wouldn't. So those kind of factors do swing me back in favour of Kyprios. And I kind of like the fairy tale story that there is plenty for him to prove, weirdly, considering he's proven everything. But just that extra race in the season, the soft ground he had over in France, all of these factors that make the story a little bit better. It's not just a Group 2 he's picking up. He's going to get a vengeance on Trawlerman, and he's going to finish off his season with a perfect 7. So I'm in the Kyprios camp, and I really hope he does it.
Yes, and I'd largely agree with you, to be perfectly honest. Jack, there was kind of questions around asking Aidan O'Brien whether he was tempted to run him in the Arc. Where do you think Kyprios would finish in the Arc if he had run in it this year?
In this year's Arc, I think he would have been in the first 5. I think it was a poor renewal. And it depends how they would have ridden him. If they'd ridden him to the 4, I think he could have been in the first 4 or 5 for sure.
It's funny. I always say he's a stayer, but with so much class, isn't he? He doesn't really look like a stayer when he races. He looks a lot classier than anything else. Bar maybe Trawlerman, who also holds a fair bit of class, but he does have the class to go in an Arc.
He looks to have infinite reserves of stamina, doesn't he? It just looks like you get horses coming to him, and you're thinking, I've got a chance of beating him, and he just seems to have just endless amounts of stamina. If you have an opinion out there watching, where do you think Kyprios would have finished in this year's Arc de Triomphe? Please do comment. It'd be really interesting to see what everybody says. We've got a lad coming in. Come on, lads, let's get on with the winners, please. Art Power in the sprint again. So we'll get on to that, shall we? Shall we get on to the sprint, as it is the next race for us to cover? So, Frankie, do you have an opinion on this year's sprint?
Not a super strong opinion. It's wide open, isn't it? I suppose my opinion is to probably take on Kinross. He hasn't won a Group 1 in 2 seasons now, although he's been a fantastic horse and one that I've loved following. I do wonder, is his talent just starting to fade a touch, as we've seen this season, really? I think on credentials, Millstream's got to be in there after winning the July Cup and then also having a 3rd place in the sprint at the Royal Meeting. I think on those 2 races, Millstream really deserves to be in the mixer, and maybe a bit of a soft each way play, but I would like to see him in the frame. And then a big price because I was just trying to go value hunting. Bucanero Forte, perhaps, who came back from a big break, finished 6th at Haydock and 7th at the Curragh in the Flying 5. Probably a bit too quick for him. Did stay on reasonably well. I'm not saying that he was staying on with any sort of chance, but he ran well in the last half furlong or so. And I just think he's potentially overpriced. You're looking for horses that handle soft ground. He's won on his debut. I'm not suggesting that he's a soft ground horse because of that, but I'm hoping that it wouldn't stop him. So they'd be my two. Millstream, just on the credentials from this year, Ascot form and Group 1 form. There's plenty of horses in here that don't have that. And Bucanero Forte, perhaps you make excuses after a 111-day break at Haydock, and you make excuses over 5 at the Curragh. Could he run well over 6 on soft ground after those 2 starts? Maybe.
I think you certainly can. I mean, I think you want to be looking at horses at double figure prices in this, given it's, this day as a whole. I mean, last year there were numerous double figure winners. It was bloodbath for anyone taking short prices on these horses. It was the opposite of the Cheltenham Festival. It's a really engaging day to get stuck into if you want to find a big priced winner. 40-1 winner of this last year, Art Power. So I wouldn't put you off any. Jack, where do we start with this race? I would look at this and go, Montasib winning the Sprint Cup at Haydock is probably the best piece of recent form. He's clearly, even though he hasn't won at Ascot yet, it's a track that should really suit his run style, being a horse that stays 7, but is really come into his own over 6 furlongs. And he's in probably the form of his life, almost absolutely the form of his life. Is he a horse that we should be taking against Kinross, given their prices?
At the prices, I would be very much in the Kinross camp. I think what you say is very important, though. That Haydock Sprint Cup form is the form, because you need to watch it back. You had Elite Status and Swing Along on the near side rail, and that was no man's land. So I think you can put a line through both of them. It's a bit annoying because I probably would have put up Swing Along, and she was around 20-1 earlier in the week. But Hugh Taylor, I think, put her up yesterday or this morning. She's now 12-1, which is about the right price. She's not from 8 in Group 1, so therefore I'd say around 12s is probably fair on her now. But if you look at her, she was in the wrong place now twice in the Haydock Sprint Cup, wrong side of the track in this race last year. But she's been banging on the door. She was 2nd in the Sprint Cup as well. And she'd be one if you drifted her out to around 16-1 on the day. I probably would be tempted in. But there is one I really do like who didn't run in the Sprint Cup, and that is Bavatier for Jan Barbaro. Now, if you watch back that foray, Rama 12 visually was so impressive. But Bavatier over the last 3 furlongs, he actually ran a length and a half quicker, 0.3 seconds, which is around about the translation to a length and a half. He was actually the last horse off the bridle. He was just given far too much to do, and obviously that's sensational form, really. He's quite a frustrating horse that he has to be kind of ridden like that. I'm not sure whether 6 or 7 is his best trip. So a stiff 6 here on hook deep ground at Ascot is going to be absolutely perfect, I think. Because he's French trained, not many people will have heard of the trainer, Jan Barbaro. He might be coming under the radar on price as well. He's a general 12-1, but I think he can get 16s. And for me, I think he's a really strong each way price. He's got a decent enough draw as well. And as I say, I think he could be a bit of value. I think he should be maybe half the price. I'd certainly have him in single figures. A high draw is fine for me. I don't mind it, certainly in the sprint.
Interesting. We got from JL commenting in, James Delight beat Bavatier, but bigger price. So JL's disagreeing with you there, Jack. But in my opinion, just to throw my two penneth in, I would look at these, and I'd always have a theory over the last few years, especially with our sprinters, that they're just not quite as good in terms of as a division compared across, obviously, to our stayers, our mid-distance horses, our milers. I look at audience and just think to myself, he's by far the best of these on ratings. And yes, if you could actually see him throughout his career, he is he's a horse that has 6 furlong pace, and I could see him doing a similar thing. I think he's drawn in the right part of the track with a low draw, and I think a lot of the races on Champions Day tend to materialize over the far side, and I could see him just hanging on and being better than these. And it's not always that you see horses coming back, even if they go really quick, as we did see last year. He's beaten Kinross already this year. He's had 2 Group 1s to his name, which he's won in scintillating style over a very quick 7 furlongs at Goodwood as well, I might add. as well, which is that I would say that 7 furlongs in the Lennox at Goodwood is quite comparable, really, to in terms of probably what it takes out of a horse to this sort of test in terms of distance. The ground will be the thing. Whether the ground really does blunt him getting away, I don't know. But I do think he has a massive class edge on some of these, and I'll take him personally at 12-1, I think.
Yeah, I don't disagree, Joe. Even just like when I first looked at the race, I was drawn to him instantly and thought, yeah, is he just better class than all of these? Can he have it his own way? Just let him rip and see what happens.
Exactly. He's potentially about £7 clear on official ratings. He's had some serious performances this year. I can see Jack detests this shout, so I'll let you come in, Jack.
I just have one worry with Audience. I think, in essence, you're probably right on this card. You want low numbers, but just looking at the pace, he's the only kind of one drawn low, whereas you've got Art Power, Swing Along, Bucanero Fuerte, and Kinross, who can probably force it on this near side. And that's probably why I quite like Bovati in that respect. He's just going to be able to attack in. And I just worry the Audience might be left alone, and it's quite hard to cut out your own run, and certainly at Ascot, you can kind of get away with Newbury.
I do think he is the perfect horse for that, though. If you do see sometimes these races on the straight track at Ascot where a horse gets miles clear on the far side and does win. If
we saw it with Big Rock last year, for sure.
And I think with Audience for a long time, Rab has particularly been interested to get him away from other horses. I think the closer he is to other horses, the more upset he gets. And it'd be interesting to see anyway how he comes out the last time, because I think he got really upset at York, and he's a sort of hot horse, and you don't really want him to be over the top for the year. He could be, but I think the Gosdens are finally coming into a bit of form. So I quite like him. I don't think he's a 12-1 shot, which you can get if you shop around. I think that's a bit too insulting for basically the highest quality horse in the race that I think is going to be absolutely fine at the trip. But we shall see. Right, on we go. Unless anyone has any further views on that, which I get the feeling that you don't. So we'll go on to the fillies and mares. And probably I'm going to come to Jack.
So I've actually had quite a long-term fancy. For anyone who followed me on Twitter, they would have saw that I put up Quintanamera around 2 months ago now, or 6 weeks or so. The problem is now I'm a bit of an after-timer in that I can't really put her up at 8 when she was 33s. But I think
you'll have a go anyway, though, won't you?
Well, I don't really have any other strong opinion, so I have to mention that I can't desert her. But if you look at her form last time out, she'd be a very good yardstick and a rest. Now, to be fair, they dawdled that day and sprinted, which wouldn't be to his liking, but he's a proper standard setter, and she fair bolted past him, and that was a career best from her. She's not going to have any problems on the ground. German pedigree as well, of course. And again, like the sort of the French trainer angle, again, I think she could have been coming in under the radar. Now she's been declared. I think she's probably around the right price now at 8-1. Kalpana sets a very strong standard, but I'd certainly worry about stamina for her on this stiffer track and on soft heavy ground. So yeah, I'd be taking her on for sure. And I think Tiffany could be the other one. It was a real error of mine taking on Alpinista a few years ago, as Joey will attest. I think Tiffany's been.
I think just to go back to it, you said Alpinista cannot win the Arc and will not win the Arc. She has no chance. She'd have just as much chance if I were riding her. I think are the sorts of sentiments you had.
Pretty much, yeah. So in this game, you've got to learn from your mistakes. So I certainly won't be doing that with Tiffany. And I think, to be fair, she's unlucky not to be unbeaten this season. She was beaten by Queen of the Pride at Haydock earlier in the year, but she was one of those horses that slipped on the bend. So I would put a line through that. I think she should be clear second favourite. Again, with Sir Mark Prescott, probably not the most fashionable trainer in recent years in these Group 1s. He obviously is a master of his craft, isn't he? And I think certainly she could be one of the springers. I could see her being quite strongly supported over the next 48 hours. But Quintanamera, certainly the main selection for me. But yeah, Tiffany as well. I'd be taking on Kalpana.
Interesting. Frankie, what are your thoughts on this race? Is Kalpana a horse that you'd warm to, a price about round 5-2?
She looked incredibly classy, didn't she? But maybe one just that looks a bit tougher, perhaps a bit more racing experience under their belt, maybe raced on more testing conditions recently. Maybe she might get found out in deeper waters and tougher conditions. I like Queen of the Pride. If you were right about audience in the previous race, then we can have the York, well, not the York form, the opposite of the York form double. 2 horses that flopped at York but could run well here.
The redemption form, yeah.
Yeah, she was never happy. It wasn't that York race. It wasn't a case of she ran her race and wasn't good enough. She just didn't run her race, and that's not too unusual, really. On quick ground at York, it's a funny track, isn't it? And it can be rattling quick, and it certainly wouldn't be the first time that a horse has completely bombed out of York and then ran well elsewhere on softer going.
Absolutely.
You're shaking your head like you're going to tell me a horse, but you're going to give me a good example. And as you mentioned, the Gosden's in really good form, 27% strike rate. So they're in flying form. She proved herself at Haydock previously over 1.5 miles in 2 group races. And then I like to believe that the stories of like Asheen Murphy riding her being by Roaring Lion, and he won on this day on soft ground, and all of those sorts of things that tie in. I like to add them to a little bit of bias, but I think she's overpriced. As we said at the top of the show, all racing is competitive, and last year we had big prices, and I believe too many people have thrown her out after York when she showed enough talent at Haydock, and she's for a banging form yard, she should go close, in my opinion.
Of all the tracks in the country, Jack, wouldn't you say that York is one of those places that just for some reason the racing surface, some horses take to it and some don't? Would that be fair?
Yeah, I think so. Certainly, well, one horse that certainly comes to mind is Sacred, who was so good and just couldn't run there, couldn't put one leg in front of the other. So I'd certainly buy into that. Some horses, I know a horse closer to home, Wise Eagle. He completely fried his head when the first time he went there, because obviously horses have to come over the Knavesmire, Batash more famously as well. So yeah, it's certainly a track that I think if horses have got a good constitution, then it suits them as well. But if a horse is running on its nerves a bit, then it wouldn't suit them quite so much. But yeah, I think that's quite an interesting point. And it's going to be a busy day at Ascot, but I think certainly with the pre-parade and into it, probably suits better than a York in terms of actually walking over the Knavesmire.
And historically, I'd say it's a quieter day than the kind of carnage at York, for sure. So that's something that'll be in her favour. For me personally, I'm interested to see how Doha does over 1.5 miles for the first time. I think we saw in France last time that she handles soft ground very, very well. She has she has the breeding, doesn't she? I mean, being daughter of Trev, to improve, going up to 1.5 miles for the first time. I just wouldn't put it past Rafe Beckett, given the season he's had, to pick up something with this filly. I thought she ran really, really well in the Nassau, and I just was pulling my hair out thinking, why on earth are you running this horse in the Nassau? Because I think they basically supplemented her to run in that race because they sponsor. It's either the day or they sponsor the whole thing. They obviously sponsor the whole meeting, don't they, Jack? Alshikab?
Yeah, they do. Yeah. So obviously it was a big day for them. And they ran her and blew a handicap mark that I thought, Jesus Christ, you could win another big handicap with this horse. She ran really, really well, got really close to them, and I think that she has further improvement in her on soft ground this year. And if you like Tamfana, I thought she ran really, really well behind her in the Atalanta Stakes. And Tamfana is clearly a filly that you like, Jack, that's moving in the right direction. Would you see some case for siding with Doha at the sort of price she is, around 16-1 each way? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's a race that on this ground, as I say, I think you should be taking on Kalpana. There's real question marks for me on her. And yeah, Doha unexposed over the trip, and of course it has the pedigree to suggest that should be even better, really. I see today she's been quite well supported, hasn't she? So I think people are just starting to click onto her. And around 16-1 now. So I certainly couldn't put you off. I think it's a really, really competitive renewal.
I wouldn't go near anything personally for me in this race sub 10-1. Fillies at this time of the year, when the weather's starting to change, bad ground, long season, it is going to be like it's a graveyard for me. For me, this filly's the one moving the right direction. She's getting a decent price about her, and I think she's one of my stronger fancies on the card. But we should take a little break to acknowledge the wonderful sponsors of this podcast. over to them.
Opulence Thoroughbreds is a racing and breeding syndicate operating at the highest level, with top quality horses, first-rate trainers, stable visits, social events, and not forgetting your share of the prize money and sales proceeds. Nothing compares to the thrill of watching your horse win. Head to opulencethoroughbreds.com to find out more.
Hugely frustrating, Frankie, to see Purisan getting basically, well, balloted out of the sprint. It would have been right up his street. Whether he's quite of the class to win a race of this nature, you don't know. Big prize horses have won this over years, as we said in our preview. But it was a real shame to see him not get in, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And he's been a great horse for us, really, this season. I mean, taking us to Sandown, to Ascot, a listed race at York, and he runs his race every time. And with it being softer conditions and at Ascot, like you said, it potentially outclassed, but you know that he'd be trying his best, and conditions would have suited. So it is a shame, but no, he has been. He's a bit of a favourite of mine. I think he just kind of runs a really honest race every time. So shame not to see him run, but he's been a good horse for us this year. And just to pick up off the back of that video, obviously talking about prize money and sales proceeds split, but the thing that it probably doesn't touch on enough is events that we've done. I only joined Opulence at the start of the year, but the amount of yard visits I've been on, I probably ticked off more yards with Opulence than I have previously with work this season. So there are some of the perks that maybe we don't talk about enough, because we all love to talk about the horses and the form and the racing, but stable visits and the insight you get from the trainers when you actually go down there, rather than on emailed updates and all the rest of it, however good they are. That's probably been my favourite thing. Been in plenty of cool yards in Newmarket.
Absolutely, the quality of the kind of hospitality in the days and the amount of time that you get inside yards, really, and seeing how racing goes on and the time you get with your horse is really important. And I think Opulence certainly do that exceptionally well. Onto the QE2, Frankie, I believe you're a fan of the Grey Lad that's at the top of the market, a horse that's been trained, I think, spectacularly actually by Roger Variant. On this podcast, occasionally we've been slightly critical of Roger, with the quality of horses that he gets over the years, but there's no doubt he's shoved it in our face with the way he's trained this horse.
Yeah, a super horse, and like you said, just seems to be getting better and better. He would have a hat trick of Group 1s to his name had it not been for Tribalist nicking the race from him over at Longchamp. So I really fancy him to go and, I suppose, get vengeance in a way, because everybody thought he had the class to win that race and he didn't. He was brilliant at the Royal Meeting. He obviously chased home Audience, who we've spoken about, who I wouldn't say he nicked the race, but he certainly surprised people at Newbury that day, including Charon and his backers, I'd imagine. So I'd love him to win. And I suppose this has kind of been my theme somewhat, is that, it's a terrible word, isn't it, for a Group 1 horse, but durable horses, maybe a 4-year-old over a 3-year-old, a horse that's ran more races, a horse that's gone on softer ground over your kind of up-and-coming flashy horse. We're at the end of the season now. I want a bit of grit, and I think Charon can just tough this out.
Interesting. Jack, he's a horse that you, on the other hand, have never warmed to. Another one of those unbelievably successful, brilliantly classy, wonderful stories that you have no time for whatsoever.
He's just a horse that I think he's kind of been... He's just fell in these right races. I mean, if you look back at the Queen Anne, he beat Docklands, who was a handicapper at the time. Just the races have worked out perfectly for him, and then when it's gone wrong, he's been beaten by Tribalist, and I mean, he hasn't exactly boosted the form since, and Audience. But I think on a line through, like in Spiral, who he beat in the Prix-Jacques Le Marois, he's only beat her to a similar distance, pretty much, that what Tanfana did, and I just can't believe how short he is here. Look, I know he goes on the ground, but I just think he's one of the worst favourites on the card, to be honest. I really do, and I think he's got to be taken on. He has to be. So,
Come on, Chief. What are you taking?
Well, I've been a huge fan of Tamfana all season. She should have won the 1,000 guineas. They were messing on all season, not running over the right trip. And since they have dropped back to a mile, she's now 2 from 2 since then. To be fair, she got the run of the race at Newmarket last time. She probably won't get that here. But she can run on the speed. I think that's probably a good thing for this race. There's not too much pace by the looks of it. Poker face as well. It depends what they do with Henry Longfellow, but she's going to be near enough on the speed. I think that's the right place to be. And I just think you have to take on Sharon. The price is at 6-4. He's a rancid price, I must admit, in my opinion. And if you compare to his price in comparison to Factor Cheval in June as well, they went off pretty much the same price, didn't they? 130 to 7-2. I mean, I'd much rather back Factor Cheval if you give me a match bet as well. He's as big as 9-1 in the place, generally 8. He lost a shoe that day. He was given a brain dead ride to come in the middle of the track, follow the other French horse. I mean, I don't know what Maxime Guillaume was doing. He's back. He's got a chance at retribution here. So surely he'll stay within the main pack. And he goes on the ground. He was the only horse that got close to Big Rock last year in like deplorable conditions. So we know that's not going to be a problem as well. So yeah, Tamfana and Factor Cheval for me, definitely. I'd be taking those two over Sharon for sure.
What do we make of Prague?
I mean, like that's a fairy tale story. I don't think he's quite good enough, I must admit. I think it was a great performance in the Joel Stakes, but I think he was entitled to win it, and he's got to step up again. But I mean, how could you begrudge him winning that? I mean, what a story it would be, and for the lad looking after him at home as well. Like this would make him into a stallion, like be worth millions. So no, I mean, to be fair, from a non-betting point of view, I'm absolutely going to be cheering him on. I mean, what a story for an up-and-coming and really progressive trainer, and Dylan Cooner as well.
They're getting for 10,000 guineas, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, for a
Galileo sensational pedigree, yeah, it's something else. But again, if you're looking for a horse that's the class angle in the race, well, potential class angle, I think if they go back to being aggressive with Henry Longfellow, you could see him running really, really well again. Could you not, Jack? I mean, the ground will be my only question, that whether he can really, really hit his top-notch cruising pace on this ground. But he's by Dubawi. They tend to go on anything, obviously out of minding. This is a top-class horse. And if we go back to the St. James's Palace, he's run it very close with probably the standout miler, 3-year-old miler. And if it would go back 2 months, we were saying the miling division this year is the real standout division of the 3-year-olds coming forward, and we're really excited about how high quality they are. And we've given up on him when they've kind of gone back to holding him up a bit. Do you reckon that they will ride him more aggressively on Saturday afternoon?
Well, they admitted their mistake in trying to make the run in a Goodwood, didn't they? So I mean, there's no one really better at tactics than the lads. I've been so disappointed with it. I had such high hopes. I'm quoted as saying I thought he could be as good, if not better, than City of Troy this year, and he's been really disappointing, hasn't he? I think he's got a bit to prove now, I must admit, and I have to walk away from him. I just think he's not quite the same as he was last season, Joey.
It'd be one I'd be interested in maybe just having a small saver on in the race. But I do, as has been said, for me personally, Frankie, Factor Cheval is probably the most solid horse on the ground. As he goes on the ground, he's been proven. If he gets a better ride than he did last visit, as Jack has already pointed out, which I think is highly likely that he will face redemption, he'll be there and thereabouts, won't he? I mean, his win in Dubai was very impressive.
Yeah, I mean, last year's form on the ground in this race instantly draws you to him, doesn't it? Any horse that's kind of performed it at the track, on the ground, or even in the race, you've got to go. And that was an exceptional performance by Big Rock as well, wasn't it? So
yeah, it was.
To get closest to him in a race that's obviously going to be top quality every year. I think if you're placed in any of these races and coming back to have a crack again, provided you haven't had a terrible season, I couldn't put you off a horse that's an each way price that has previous form on Champions Day in any of these Group 1 races, because the standards is high year after year.
And I remember him coming out of the clouds, in the most horrendous conditions. Those days at Goodwood you can get where it's just absolutely horrendous. The sea mist comes in, you can't see a horse until it's 20 yards in front of your face and has crossed the line. That was him running really, really well behind Paddington, wasn't it? So he's a horse I really, really like. So I think he's the solid one in the race. But with that in mind, we should kick on to Jack's favourite subject and William Haggis, and the best race on the card, I think, by a country mile. And we're about to hear 5 minutes on why Economics is going to win this and why Haggis is the best trainer that's ever lived.
And look, it's brilliant that we're getting to a real clash between the two. It's a shame we don't get to see either of them take on the pair together, City of Troy. I know Calandagan was beaten last time, but if you watch that back turning in at the top of the straight, Calandagan's one of the first off the bridle. And for all that he's got form on softer ground, I do think he is better over a mile and a half, as documented by his win at Royal Ascot in the summer. So again, another 10 furlong. I just think this is just on the sharp side from him. And therefore, I can't believe why he's been the one for support over Economics, who, he went and won the Group 1 there. And I know Tom O'Connor's getting a lot of praise, but I don't think it was the best of rides at Leopardstown. I thought Economics got him out of trouble. I thought it wasn't a bad ride, because any winning ride isn't bad, but it wasn't the most efficient. And he asked him to go wide, and he asked a lot of him. And I think Tom would have breathed a sigh of relief as he got him over the line, because he really did battle in that furlong. To do that against Auguste Rodin, who had pretty much a nice toe into him off him, I think that was a serious performance. And that's why I have to be with Economics, aside from any sort of affiliation to William Haggis. He even says that he's going to be better with a bit of cut underfoot. Whether it's going to be really soft or heavy, then that's another question mark. But he certainly has a bit of promise on his pedigree as well to suit this. And I think this is a horse that, we don't really know where his ceiling is. The patience has kind of been rewarded after the Dante. He was so impressive, wasn't he, that decided not to go to the Derby. And look now, he's hopefully a horse that will stay on the training next season. I'm fairly sure he will. And he's going to hit all the heights, hopefully, and hopefully he can start with another win here.
For sure. It'll be I don't really personally have a desire to have a bet in this particular race. The closest I probably came was See the Fire, but I also agree with Jay, who's commented in saying that Iracine is overpriced for this. I think that if Ascot does get a lot more rain, the stamina he has might come into effect, and I could see him playing a part in this. But for me, those two at the top of the market, this is the one for me where I just kind of want to watch and see who comes out on top, because their CVs are pretty solid. Would you agree with that, Frankie, or do you have something at a big price for me here?
No, I'm the same. I'm really struggling to split the top two. I know that's not what viewers want to hear. They want a really strong opinion on why one horse is going to win. But yeah, I suppose we don't know the ceiling for either of them, do we? I do think that Calandagan, if the race hadn't panned out the way it did at York, and City of Troy didn't go forward like he did, perhaps could have really, really got him in trouble, because he has a serious turn of foot. And if the race was held together a little bit longer and City of Troy didn't lengthen and go and win the race, I believe you could have made a case that he would have seriously been challenging. So that kind of conflicts me, because I'm the biggest City of Troy fan. And if I start talking about that, then I think, well, if he got that close and he could be challenging him, then surely he'd be winning this. But I don't know, the confidence that's come out of Tom Marquand, William Haggis's mouth ahead of and post
Jack Nicholls' mouth.
Jack Nicholls' mouth, yeah. I don't know. I don't feel like I've heard them talk that positively about a horse that certainly before a race anyway for a while. Like, Tom seemed so confident before going to Ireland. And that's not really in his character. All William Haggis's, they do the talking after the race, wouldn't they? So
absolutely.
That's what's splitting me the other way. So yeah, I don't know. I can't split him. If it was any better ground, King's Gambit would be in with a chance. Who's only finished like a half a length behind Los Angeles, but potentially the soft ground is why he is as big a price as he is. But I think let's just enjoy it, and yeah, we'll find out who comes out on top. But I really can't split him, to be honest.
Yeah, if you're searching for a bet at a bigger price, I'd say Racine is probably one of those that's going to be ridden aggressively and could well be there given the conditions. But I think this is a podcast shout for Economics. I would be in agreement with Jack if I was having to. If you're going to be trying to find a bet in this race, then go with economics because I think we all have, and flat out throughout the years, been a big fan of economics. So, yeah, this hopefully will be his crowning day for the season.
We wouldn't want the French to come over and nick it either, would we? We'd rather it stay with William.
Yeah, it'd be a disaster, wouldn't it? It'd be an absolute disaster. There's no result that's worse than the Frogs coming over and winning stuff. So,
well,
yeah,
as long as they win the sprint, I'll be happy if they win the sprint.
No, we can't have that, Jack. I'm sorry, mate. I'm sorry, but yeah, no, a very interesting shout in the sprint for sure with Bavatier. Right, so that is basically the Group 1's done and dusted. The group race is done and dusted. Time for the Heritage Handicap, the Balmoral. Always brutally competitive. That has to be said. You may well pick a very well handicapped horse, and this runs really well that gets beaten by a group horse, as is often the way with some of these big Saturday handicaps. But I'm sure, Jack, you have something for us.
I have two main selections and a really sort of a bit of a swinger as well, but we'll start with the main two. And now Bill Farrell's probably not a trainer I'd even heard of at the start of the season, I must admit. He's a small trainer based on the other side of the Curragh. I think he only has a handful of horses, but one of the performances of the season was when State Actor won in the spring year. I was absolutely blown away by how he won, and it was just a horse straight in the track. I was like, that is a horse to follow. I then could not believe how this horse was beaten, but it was under another Ryan Moore masterclass. He loves doing that to me, pulling out these absolute worldies when he got Wigmore Street up to beat him. I'd say since then that's been absolutely the plan for State Actor. I've actually gone back and watched a few of the interviews with Bill Farrell, and he seems like a real true trainer. And I'd say they've thought market 95. Let's go for the Balmoral. That's going to be perfect for him. I think he's a stakes horse, and they've kind of protected his mark for a big pot this season. And then the fact he's come here, they've got Chris Hayes on, suggests that this has kind of been the plan. I really do like him. I think you can get as big as 10-1 on him. He has a really good draw in stall 2. Generally, in the Balmoral, you do want to be low to middle numbers. Historically, there has been a few that have run at high numbers, but generally, you kind of want to be stall 11 or 12 or lower in this. So stall 2 is perfect for him. And the other, Joe, you will vouch for me on this. We spoke about Holloway Boy in the summer. He was a huge eye catcher in the Royal Hunt Cup over this course and distance, and I said, this is a horse that is so frustrating because he's so consistent, but he just struggles to get his head in front. And since kind of from the Royal Hunt Cup, he's kind of improved on that, and he actually won again for the first time since the Chesham, didn't he, at Haydock last time?
He did.
Beaten Prague, who's around 8-1. He's 12-1 here, Holloway Boy. So that doesn't kind of add up to me. I know he's got a lot of weight, but kind of you look back in the last season or two, horses like Migration and the Lincoln, Liberty Lane, Astro King have defied top weight in these big handicaps. And I think Holloway Boy is a class act, absolutely loves the track and has a bit of form on soft ground as well. And it would be really apt as well that if Carl Burke could top what a wonderful season he's had as well. So he's kind of been the trainer to follow, hasn't he, as well as Rafe Beckett. So those would be my two main ones. And just really quickly, one at a huge price. David O'Meara kind of targets this as well. He's won 3 of the last 7 renewals. And just at the prices, it's annoying because he's been clipped in from around 50s. But Mirsky, he's 33-1. He doesn't have a great draw in 19, but I'm going to throw a few quid at him. With Sky, if you can get on with them, they're actually 7 places. He's the highest price with them. So obviously shop around for your places. I just think he's one that on his French form, he won't mind the ground, and he split Holloway Boy. So there's an angle there on the form, and Thunder Run at York. So from those two at the top of the market, and you've got him right down at the bottom, I just think he's kind of the wrong price.
And Holloway Boy is a horse that I like, Jack. That's why we were discussing him. So for sure, he's one that I would really fancy for this. I think he would, as we were discussing before the podcast, he would be the highest rated horse to win this off what was it? 110? Was it 110?
110, yes. So Aldari won this off 109. So he would be defying the stats. But as we were saying as well, that he wouldn't even be the lowest rated in the QE2. I think there'd be 4 rated lower than him. So he's very much the class act for me in this.
And through a line through Mirsky, I believe, Frankie, you're very keen on Thunder Run. Yeah,
we mentioned Mirsky, mentioned Holloway Boy, mentioned Carl Burke. No mention of Thunder Run. I think he's got a solid chance. He, I'd say his mark certainly would have been protected for that race at York because Clipper Logistics sponsored the race and obviously own Thunder Run. He comes here as is it just the two that Carl Burke's got? Yeah, just the two.
I think so, yes.
I believe so. Yeah.
Ryan Moore booked on Thunder Run and William Buick booked on Holloway Boy. So he's got a very strong two-pronged attack. And as we spoke about before the show, I'm also a fan of Holloway Boy. He's been a good servant for backers this season, certainly. But I just think Thunder Run coming straight here from York and only being put up £4, I thought was entitled to win again. He hasn't raced on anything worse than good to soft, but doesn't necessarily mean he won't handle it. He's by Night Thunder, who won his fair share of races on testing conditions. With Ryan Moore booked, I'd say he's got a great chance. I know it's towards the top of the market in a ridiculously competitive handicap, but I just felt £4 was pretty generous. And to come straight here, got to be in with a spin.
Absolutely. And we should mention Andy Stevens, a learned colleague, got involved on the comments here and says the winner of Balmoral has jumped from stall 4 3 times since 2015. Lincoln winner Mr. Professor is in there this time. Should like the ground. So fantastic stat from Mr. Stevens there. If anyone fancies a stat-based bet, which is obviously a long way away from the worst way to go to when you are kind of looking at these extremely competitive races that tend to have trends over time. Jack, how would you feel about Thunder Run at the top of the market? Do you think he's a little bit too short?
Yeah, I'm glad you've come back to me. I just think it's a really interesting jockey book, and I know Ryan Moore's the type of jockey who can't jock off other riders, but we know Danny Tudhope is the retained rider for Clipper, and he's riding Bo Pedro. As a grand old horse, I love Bo Pedro, but I think he's like 0 from 9. The best ever position he's got at Ascot was 3rd last time out. I think he's been 3rd a few times, to be fair, at Ascot. But it suggests to me if he's never been able to win, he might just find 1 or 2 too good again. But he's such a grand horse. But yeah, it's just interesting. Ryan was jocked up really early in the week, so his agent Tony Hines done a really good job to get Danny Tudhope off him, and he's got a great chance. My other worry for him, Thunder Run, the only thing is it's drawing stall 21. It's quite a negative. It's a huge ask to kind of get over if that foreside is favoured once again.
David O'Meara horse won it from the widest stall, didn't he? What was he
did, yeah.
In the Escobar, he won this race from there. You do see horses that do kind of drop in this race, don't they, and come through from the back. I mean, Sharjah Bridge was another one that, he could have been drawn in the car park for the position he got himself into for all it mattered, because he basically needed a helicopter to win with about 2 furlongs to run, and he managed to pick his way through somehow. So it's one of those races, isn't it? It doesn't have a massive long history to draw on, but it does seem that you want to be towards the far side. But there is going to be a hell of a gallop on, and the pace will collapse. So if you can get into a good position on the outside of the pack, there theoretically should be no reason why you shouldn't be able to come through and win. So I'd be hopeful that that horses that are drawn a little higher aren't completely discredited, and that's why I quite fancy Toy Me Son myself. I think that run in the Cambridgeshire was very, very good. I think dropped down to a mile be exactly the direction he wants, but he's run to a really high level. He's in as good a form as ever. David Menuisier is going as well as he's ever gone. It's the perfect time to be with this horse because he's hitting top straps, and I think on some of his older form you can say he's reasonably handicapped, and I hope he will handle the ground fairly well. He is drawn in 17, which is not ideal. I will be going in with Holloway Boy as well because I think this is his optimum conditions, and I think he can a class can out in this race, and I'm really hopeful that he can win as well. So those would be my 2 in the race for all that matters. Any others, gents? In the other one, I would have actually liked to have been Theory of Everything, but he's unlikely to get in because he's a reserve. So, but David O'Meara I think he's won it 3 times, hasn't he? So over to Jack.
Just to say, if Kirat, he's reserve 1, if he does get in, this horse doesn't stay a mile in a horse box. He's a horse that absolutely wants 7 furlongs. So if he gets in, I'll be absolutely taking him on. He's got until 1 o'clock tomorrow, in the afternoon, 1 o'clock, before is the deadline for those reserves. But anyone who's back those 3, you will get your money back if they don't run.
And make sure if you don't, you contact your bookmaker because you have a right to it back. Right. Okay, Frankie, best bet of Saturday's action.
I think I am Gonna go with Queen of the Pride in the fillies and mares. I think when it comes to fillies and mares, trainer form or stable form counts for that little bit more. And the Gosdens are absolutely flying. And as I said, I'm just ignoring York completely, and she certainly can be competitive on the Haydock form. So she's too big a price for me. I'd be really hopeful she'll be in the frame.
Fantastic. Jack?
Just looking at the prices, I think economics here is you can get 15-8. So with a few bookies here, so at those prices, there's no way he should be that big. Those two are so far clear. But if you can get 15-8 on him, in terms of a win bet, he'd be my strongest. But I really do like Bavatier and Tam Foreign as well. But Bavatier each way and economics, if you can get the 15-8, is outstanding for me.
Fantastic. I did think you make a particularly strong case for Bavatier in the sprint. We want big prices for that race for sure. I should just add, again, Andy Stevens in touch saying that the last 7-year-old to win the champion was in 1887. We take that with a pinch of salt? I don't know, but he definitely doesn't fancy Iracine anyway, because he is the 7-year-old in this race. So everyone, right, thank you for that. My best bets for what it's worth would be audience. I think the class angle in the sprint is something that will make you money over time, backing the classier horses that drop down into those sprints, as Kinross showed, actually, because he was one of those that was parachuted in from the classier divisions and showed that he could outclass sprinters. So I hope he handles the ground. So for me, it'll be audience in the sprint. But apart from that, I want to say thank you to our guests. Thank you, Jack. Great to have you.
Cheers. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Frankie, for your time this evening.
Cheers, gents. Really enjoyed it and looking forward to racing Saturday.
And great. So that's our final flat out of the season. I hope you enjoy all the action this weekend on Racing TV. Please like and subscribe. And if you've enjoyed the show, please remember to gamble responsibly and enjoy all the action. Thank you till next time.